Hey, Dave Melenda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you. We're going to talk about one of my favorite words this week, and I'm going to start you out with a question. And on the surface, super easy question. Are you a positive person? And so, like I said, really easy on the surface. And I rarely, if ever, meet somebody that says, no, I'm a negative person, right? So the kind of the challenge here is if you say yes, that's awesome. But then I'm going to challenge you to ask somebody close to you and make sure that they think you're a positive person, because it might be a blind spot for you, which we talk a lot about today. So I'm going to be hanging out today with Emily Marquis. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Dave. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You're a clinical health and wellness coach, and there's a bunch to unpack today. So thank you for hanging out with us. I'm excited to learn about wellness. It just seems like such a wide topic. It's such a
It
broad
is.
word. So when you think of wellness, when you talk to your clients or business owners, entrepreneurs that are listening, what's like your definition of wellness?
Well, it is broad, and there's many determinants of our well-being and our wellness. So without getting touchy or maybe kind of leaning into the touching feeling, it's whatever makes you feel well, and whether that's mental, physical, spiritually, if you want to go there. I mean, finances can even be a determinant of that. If that's not making you feel well, it's cause of a external or internal um, stressor or positive piece of your life. Just really making you what makes you feel well. There's many things that can go into that, and it's individual.
Okay, so how does that transition over into the workplace? Because if you ask people how they feel well, some of them would be like, I'd feel really well, Emily, if I wasn't here right now. you know?
Yes.
So if, hey, on the beach somewhere, how can you not have wellness on a beach somewhere, right? So how does
Right.
that transition over into the corporate world? How have you kind of,
Mhm.
crossed that bridge there?
Well, I worked in HR for many years, which is honestly what kind of jump started me to get into more of the wellness
Okay.
and the holistic point of that. So I saw many people that didn't feel well in the work environment, and that can mean many different things. It can mean their environment, is everything cubicles, and that's not good for them, or the way they're treated. Do they have autonomy or flexibility or an authoritative boss, or do they feel heard? So those can be it. But also, yeah, are they sitting uncomfortably? Are they feeling taken care of in the benefits and salaries that they're being supplied? Are they feeling part of a supportive team with connection there? And then, yeah, are they being fed candy all day long, or like on Seinfeld, having cake for every occasion? So there's
Sure.
definitely different aspects of what people can do to feel well.
Okay.
But there's many things that a company can do to support that, because someone who feels generally well is going to be a person that stays longer and is more productive.
Okay. So you answered my question of why is team wellness so important. So you're saying the research shows that they stick around longer, they're more
Mhm.
productive, they're engaged, and it's sad to see the Gallup poll comes out every year and basically shows the same statistic for the US workforce that 2 out of 3 people are not engaged in their work. They show up and
Right.
they try and do as little as possible. They love to say it's not my job. Those are the type of people, again, 2 out of 3 people in every organization. And so if we are, looking to improve the team, from what I'm hearing, team wellness then becomes, top on the list, because I'm assuming if you're not well, if you're sick physically, emotionally, spiritually, all those that you talked about, it's really hard to be effective at work, I would assume, correct?
Right. I mean, the saying of just leave your personal life at the door, it doesn't work. It never has, and now we're just being more open to that. And we spend so much of our time at work, especially in the American culture, and we're now infiltrated with trying to manage work-life balance with having emails or texts or anything coming in on all sorts of different apps at night. So it's very important to focus on holistically how someone feels and if they feel supported and access to different resources that they can have to take care of their life outside of the work so that they can come in more whole when they get to work.
So, and that's a great starting spot right there. So if we have a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners that listen.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's one or two of them that are like, yeah, I don't really spend much time thinking about the wellness of my team. I
Yeah.
look at the wellness of my bottom line, or I look at the wellness of my supply chain. I mean, there's plenty of ways that you can keep busy as a business owner. And you mentioned resources. So where would you start with somebody that says, Emily, I really, I'm listening to what you're saying. It's resonating with me. Where do I start this kind of
Mm-hmm.
complicated journey towards wellness?
Well, I think that an entrepreneur can get overwhelmed. Like, do I have to offer the best benefit package out there and pay $1 million? And usually the answer is no, because there are plenty of companies out there that do this for a living and want you to purchase their resources. So it's really up to your company culture. So maybe everybody wants a gym membership or a ski pass, or they need mental health benefits, or an app that provides free meditation and wellness coaching, or someone to maybe have a sedentary population with lots of diabetes. So maybe someone connecting with helping people with weight loss. So there's lots of different resources out there so that employers or entrepreneurs don't feel like they have to do it all alone, that can really actually promote their bottom line, because the healthier someone is, they're going to have less sick time, they are going to feel more engaged, and they're going to be much more loyal to an employer that's feeling supported, that they feel supported by.
Sure. And those right there, for those of you listening, those are the ROIs that you look for every week.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody stays longer, I mean, we see the incredible amount of money that it takes to onboard and retrain, rehire somebody. I mean, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you start looking at that ROI there. Sick days, ROI, the loyalty, the engagement. I mean, these are really solid, tangible things that we can provide, and that, in this case, Emily provides to be able to have a well team. So, thank you for making that so simple, to make that connection, because a lot of times, if there's not an ROI that you can point a entrepreneur to, they lose interest like instantly, right?
Yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
and so here's a hot lunch program and it costs me a bunch of money and I have no clue if it'll pay back, but do it anyway.
Right.
Those are really hard. But when you're talking about, staying longer and, working more loyal and less sick days, I mean, those are, again, really tangible items. So
Yes, retention rate should be at the top of every business owner or CEO's KPIs, something that they're monitoring closely.
yeah, and right now, especially, we all know how hard it is to find quality people. So,
Yes,
right, why go through that exercise of training somebody just to know that you're going to have to retrain again shortly? I mean, that's just
right.
crazy. Why
And
not?
recruitment costs alone, and then the
Yeah.
burnout of everyone else. So it's expensive to
Yeah.
find new people.
Especially it's funny because I don't know if people just think that when one person leaves, it's kind of like you pull that tooth and it doesn't affect the other teeth. I mean, my gosh, the whole team is upset. The apple cart's upset.
Right.
Everybody's kind of figuring out what's going on there. So all that lost time and all that lost energy. And I got to believe transferring that over into lost customers because the customer gets nervous if there's high turnover rate as well.
Right. And if you have somebody answering the phone who's disgruntled or not there, that's going to definitely impact your business. And also looking at it from a holistic standpoint of a compensation package. I mean, I believe in people being paid a valuable rate, but also include the benefits that you're offering in your cost for employees so that you can also say, okay, we're not playing at the highest percentile of salary, but look at everything else that you're getting. And that's actually proven to be more satisfactory to employees than high salary with no support in other areas.
Sure. And I think that's what's so funny about this, Emily, is that in this case, we are consumers as well. So we've all gone through the drive-through and been treated rudely. We've all been on the receiving end of a phone call, you trying to get, a cable
Right.
company or airline or whatever, and you can just tell that there's no interest for them in doing this. And,
Right.
it's easy to blame that person, but I also, like you said, I think the leader has some responsibility to make
Yes.
sure that their team is as well as possible. So, if you're listening and you don't think this applies, just think of yourself as a consumer and the last time that you were treated unfairly or rudely or disrespected, whatever. And it a lot of times can get tied back to that wellness piece. So
Of
that's
course. Yes.
really cool. So, Mike, I'm curious now with this kind of shift in, moving into remote workspace and things like that,
Mhm.
what has that done to wellness? I mean, we all been into this over a year, going on almost 2 years now of trying to hide in Zoom calls or not report to the office, whatever. I mean, have you seen that take a negative toll on people from their wellness, or what are some things that we could do to help our teams that are now remote and some of them really
Yeah.
weren't?
And I don't think it's one of those answers that's it's a depends. I
Sure.
think some people love it,
Yeah.
being able to work from home and do laundry at the same time or take a walk outside and have that. Other people are really drastically missing the connection or the differentiation of that. So it's not a one answer. It's very individualized.
Sure.
However, in the wellness field, in COVID specifically, many social and wellness outlets were removed. I mean, you can only do so much self-motivation with workout videos at home. So, and you can only manage to, you know, not drink or eat super healthy when you have
Right.
nothing else going on. So we definitely saw a decline overall in health and mental health. But the idea of remote has also opened up accessibility in
Okay.
wellness offerings. So for me, I know as a health coach, I work with many different people. I know doctors are able to work with many different people, and employers are allowing for flexible schedules for some of those appointments. So you don't necessarily
Mhm.
have to like leave the office, drive, and go those ways. And then in supporting your employees in that, it's very important to just stay connected, find ways to do that, even if it's a text check-in, a weekly meeting that isn't just all about the agendas. It's really asking the question, how's everybody doing? What do you need? How can I support you?
Sure.
Do you need, what can I support you with? Here are resources. So I think that is really the main point is building that connection and continuing to offer different ideas, or even I've seen employers do challenges. So, like, okay, we're all gonna do a yoga session in the morning, or we're all gonna try this meditation app, or we're all gonna take Friday off, or something like that. So I think team efforts, even when people aren't physically together, is the connection is there.
You had me at take Fridays off, Emily. That you don't have to tell me that twice. That'd be I've owned my
Yeah.
own business for, I don't know, 30 years now. And I still, I tell myself every year, this is the year I'm going to take Fridays off. And it's
Yes.
just like, wow. So, and now it's even worse with with allowing other people access to your calendars. And, so
Yes.
I can see where, this can become wellness all of a sudden is challenged by stress. So I feel like
Yes.
those are kind of opposite. So If somebody's listening and stress is, kind of high in their life and they're not sure where to turn, what do you usually recommend for people that are struggling with stress?
I mean, it is the number one stress and sleep is the number one reason why people are contacting me.
Okay.
And that has physical, ripple effects. Usually the root cause is stress and sleep challenges, anxiety challenges, whether
Right.
diagnosed or not. So usually it's okay, what can we do to calm that cortisol down, or calm the fight or flight down, or what's your load look like,
Hmm.
what does your schedule look like in all that you have to do, and can you prioritize some things? And then, does everyone have to meditate? No. That certainly is a path to stress reduction, but really asking, when do you feel relaxed? When do you feel joy? That
Yeah.
could be doing a sport. That could be meeting up with a friend and going on a walk. So it's like really trying to remember and think about, what could I do more of when I am feeling relaxed, and
Sure.
how can I fit that more into my life?
That's great. I think of the
Yeah.
J word that no entrepreneur likes, and that's journal.
Oh, yes.
Right? But I mean, I think about that, like you just said, if you're not very cognizant of two things in that point is number one, what creates stress, but also what alleviates stress. I mean, for me,
Mhm.
I know that by the time I'm at the bottom of my driveway on my motorcycle, I have no stress. It's gone. I
Mhm.
know that if there's been something going on, that's like the great opportunity for stress relief. The problem is that it only works like 6 months out of the year.
Right?
So,
Especially in
so
Milwaukee.
until
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Until we move somewhere warmer, it's like, yeah, I think we're gonna have to come up with a plan B on that. So if anybody knows of
Right.
a plan B, please email me because I definitely need that. But I think how does that then, we started the show off with talking about positive, being
Mhm.
positive. And how does
Mhm.
wellness and positivity, I'm going to say, how do those two kind of relate to each other?
Well, I study quite a bit positive psychology, and the neuroplasticity of our brain, really how we're wired to think, and it's possible to change, but we have narratives going on in our head all the time, whether we're aware of them or not. And I can tell you my personal stories. For a long time, I were not that nice. I'm a huge critic of myself in many things that I do, especially when I'm under pressure or
Okay.
stress. So I think a positive mindset is, oh, just be positive and have positivity. But it really does scientifically make a difference in the way you approach stress. Things can roll off your back a little bit more, but it's a dedicated practice to get there. So noticing the thoughts and trying to change the story, and having some self compassion. Again, it can sound fluffy, but really, when you notice yourself beating yourself up, how can you say, we're human, or I did great today, or I'm going to try again differently tomorrow? So how you talk to yourself is really going to impact your outlook on the world, and also how you treat others. So first of all, being positive and compassionate with yourself is the biggest practice.
Well, and like you just said, which resonated with probably a lot of people, Emily is a huge critic of yourself. Why
Hmm.
is it so hard for us to give ourselves a break?
Hmm.
Why is it so intense? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing to me. I'm still fortunate to be able to play racquetball 4 times a week or so.
Oh,
And,
wow.
it's crazy because I'm still so hard on myself. Now I'm learning this thought process of not forgiving yourself like you did something wrong, but there's another opportunity coming right around the corner. And I recently
Hmm.
had Sean Harper, which is an NFL
Mm.
lineman, on my show, and he asked the question of, who do you think missed the most shots ever in the NBA? And I had no clue that it was Kobe Bryant. And you
Oh,
wouldn't you wouldn't think that Kobe Bryant. I said Michael Jordan, and he said, well,
yeah,
he's in the
right.
top
Yeah.
five, right? But I mean, you think about all the points he scored, you think about all those things, and you don't think about how many shots you miss. Those guys have to be so dialed into next chance, next chance, next chance. Is that natural for our brain to be thinking that, or is it natural for us to kind of beat ourselves up each time?
Well, I think using that specific example, they're no mat I mean, in order to get that many shots, it proves you have to be willing to take that many shots, knowing that statistics are going to be that you're going to fail.
Yep.
It's the people that try again and are resilient through that failure are the ones that are going to succeed. And that's probably proven in that. And that's a positive mindset of having that tenacity or maybe ambition to a degree,
Mhm.
probably on an extreme level, but also willing to keep trying again because you know either you believe in yourself or your strengths, or you keep growing and improving, or you, yeah, say, I'm just going to get the next one. I'm going to get the next one. So that is a positive mindset, because if Kobe Bryant stood there and beat himself up all the time, he'd probably miss a lot more,
Yeah.
because he's just engaged in his negative thinking.
I'm not interested in losing at all, Emily. So,
Yeah,
I
right.
don't understand this. Well, let's try it again. Cause part of me thinks, and this is just me being vulnerable, part of me thinks that while you're just settling for losing, you're settling for mediocrity. So I don't know if there's a balance there, that I'm out of balance, but we do a lot of disc work for personality assessments, and
Yes.
my
Mhm.
competitive is at 100. I mean, I am not losing anything at any time, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's where it's like, I try and find that middle ground of, being okay with losing and not beating yourself up, but still, I want to win. So I don't know if you have any words of encouragement for me, or if I should just, check myself in somewhere or what, but
Yeah. Well, I think that is also part of an entrepreneur's nature. I
yeah,
mean, because that is a quality to be aggressive or assertive and competitive, that has a serving purpose to you. But yeah, the
yeah.
other extreme is like constant critic and beating yourself up. So I think if you're able to lose and be human about it and kind of beat yourself up for a minute, it's just how long is that lasting? Like a second, or you like, is it a week
It
where you're
lasts
like
all day.
setting
It
yourself?
lasts all
Okay,
day.
yeah. And then I think at some point being able to switch the story of what can I learn from
Yeah,
this so that next time I can do better.
yeah.
So there's always a learning opportunity
Way
when
easier
you
said
get
than
there.
done, right?
Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh. But yeah, which you brought it up. So you're a huge critic of yourself. So
Mhm.
you know as well how that works. So I appreciate you sharing that. As we transition, I want to go back to the workplace. Can you share some wellness programs that you've seen with some type of significant positive change, within an
Mhm.
organization? Because again, I love to try and get usable tools that people can walk away with from this podcast and be like, wow, that's
Mhm.
really interesting. I'm going to try that. So what have you seen work in organizations around the country?
Well, so much has changed literally in the past year with the options. I mean, back in the day, you just had your EAP program, which basically if someone was dying, they maybe gave a call or something.
What's
So now
EAP
I
stand for?
employee assistance program.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And basically it's a hotline that nobody
Okay.
ever calls.
Uh-oh.
But the employer felt like they were like providing something, right?
Sure.
So
EAP, please
now,
hold.
right, yeah. And so now I think what I've seen success in is coaching programs to really be a partner in somebody's health, whether
Okay.
that is, there's so many tech companies out there with, um, I know like Wellness Coach is a new app that really features stress reduction in specifically mindfulness, meditation, and sleep, which is the number one problem right now. And then also working with what's right for you. So if your insurance or you're again noticing where there are areas of challenge in people's health in diabetes or chronic illness or mental health or something like that, now there's so many programs out there that are apps that specifically target those things. So it's hard to say there's one thing out there. And
Sure.
then one thing that I really love is just having a wellness fund. So it may sound crazy and a little bit hard for someone to digest at first, but if I also see a lot of companies are paying for, HSAs, which can be used now for a variety of things. So it's money in someone's pocket, which gives them autonomy on how they want to use it,
Gotcha.
which now can be used for massages or something like that, all the way to paying for new glasses. So the other thing is just giving people like $400 a year or something, and they get to choose and submit receipts. And so that can be, again, for a gym membership or
Sure.
a ski pass, like I said, or a spa date. So again, just having autonomy beyond something that's targeted is unique. But there's
Sure.
so many apps and doctors that are partnering with employers right now to help them.
Gotcha. So as you're talking about these things, I'm trying to understand if a lot of the wellness happens outside of the office, again, assuming that we're all back at work in an office building.
Right. Yeah.
Again, does it happen? I shouldn't say out of the office, in the office. Does it happen in the hours of 8 to 5 where we're working, or is a lot of this wellness spilling over now into the 5 to 8 spot at night where it's our time, but yet, maybe we're doing, facials or doing
Mhm.
meditation or whatever these things are? Is it a combination of both, or what do you see?
Yeah, I think a spa or a facial or something like that is definitely on the client's own time.
Yeah,
However, doctors and therapists and coaches and things like that, we work normal business hours. And so if someone wants to have a doctor visit, allowing them to do so again during the day without having to feel guilty about it or to lose pay over it. And so coaching programs that I've worked with employees, the most success I have seen is when they're allowed to take 30 minutes out of their day to work with somebody, because it's convenient and
sure.
it's considered part of the culture of part of your job is to feel well.
Hmm. Well, I tell you, so for me, I have clients that I see every week as a business coach.
Okay.
And last year, and in years past, I've hired a chair massage person to
Oh
come
yeah.
in for these
Hmm.
people. And boy, I tell you what, the first year, there's like skepticism everywhere, right? For the first 10, 15 minutes, people are looking, they're going, there's no way I'm doing this, right? And then the first
Hmm.
couple of people are like, I'm in, right? And then they get their chair massage, and all of a sudden it kind of permeates the office. So there's so many different ways, but I think it takes effort, right? I mean,
Hmm.
and I think that's
Yeah.
the hard part about this is that it takes effort to come up with something, and
Hmm.
it's so easy to say, I don't have time, no one's interested, we don't have the money. I mean, there's plenty of excuses. So I'm just curious, Emily, where do you fit into this? For somebody that's
Hmm.
listening, what piece would you take away from me as an entrepreneur so that I wouldn't have to do this? Help me understand that part.
Right, for sure. So, I personally, when Obamacare was coming out and everything, I got trained as a insurance broker per se to be able to write wellness programs that were in line to be
Okay.
reimbursable. So someone like me or I could come in and create a wellness program that fits your budget and also really what's going to help your specific employees instead of just handing you a box situation. So someone like me could do that, and also um, really put together like here's an email, and then if I can support you, I'll work directly with your employees too, and then check in with you to say, hey, here's how it's going. And so um, alleviating the leadership, I think it's important that leadership is on board and
Sure.
supportive. However, I think I work directly with employees so that they also don't feel like they have to report back to an employer if they're working with something that's vulnerable.
Sure.
So I try to take that out, that completely away. It's a separate operation.
So you're in Colorado and we have
Yes.
listeners all over the world, fortunately. So do you end up being, do you have the ability to do a lot of this remote?
Hmm.
Is that an
Yes.
option now moving forward?
Yes, I've been doing this even before COVID remote. I think that's just the way things are going these days. And with what I have it just makes sense. Again, it's easy for me to read data or talk to employees on their convenience when they want to. And so it has actually made things more accessible.
So for you listening, that's what I think is so unique about this is that we bring tips every week to try and, help your business along. And so often, they're not huge expenses. It's not like we're
Hmm.
trying to spend your money for you. In this case, think about how you could, you know, enlist yourself or somebody or Emily, but enlist somebody to really be in charge of the wellness of your team.
Hmm.
It's been so long, I think, prior to, this COVID situation, it's been kind of a back burner thing. And now all of a sudden people realize that, wow, these people are spending 30, 40, 50 hours in front of a Zoom camera. What is that doing to them? Are you okay?
Hmm.
Are you
Right.
make it? So, I mean, there's a little bit of a, blip on the radar, so to speak, of interest in wellness. I just want to make sure for those of you listening to turn that into something serious and long term for your team, because Emily just said that we want to change the story. And how cool is that to be able to be part of a changing of the story for somebody on your team? Maybe they aren't the most positive people.
Mhm.
What do you do right now with somebody that's not positive on your team, and you can't really let them go because there's no one to fill their place? There's all these tough questions that are going on for business owners. So if you're listening, I think wellness is a really good place to look, and such a simple definition of, how well is your team doing? And it's so easy to get the thing complicated, right? So if what would Emily Marquis' tip of the week be for people listening? Just a simple little thing that they could take away from this time.
I agree. I think that planning, like having this at the forefront of your conversation of looking at how your business is doing is how well is your worst team member doing?
Yeah.
Not on a performance wise, but how are they really doing in their attitude, in their engagement, in their health, and start to ask some questions and focus on that and have that be part of your KPI. Have retention rates and looking at the benefits and what and the utilization of a wellness program you might have that be on a weekly conversation. Just because people are now looking for that when they're
Mhm.
looking for workplaces. That's part of their questions when they're interviewing.
Wow, and that's really a great wake up call. So think of it this way for you listening. If tomorrow you had an interview with somebody that a candidate you really wanted, I mean, you found the perfect candidate for whatever you need to fill that position. And if one of the questions, to Emily's point is, well, number one, you could say, what's the culture like? But more importantly, you could say if they asked you, what's the health and wellness of your team look like? And I tell
Mhm.
you, to Emily's point, if your face turns red, if you have the deer in the headlights look, if you don't have a really solid plan in place, it's entirely possible that that person is going to bypass you and, go somewhere where they're investing in the health and wellness of the team. And so that's a great point. Thanks for pointing that out. I also think that you brought up another thing. So many entrepreneurs are just so meticulous on how healthy their profit and loss statement is. They tear that thing apart, they
Yes.
invest in it, they stare at it, they look at it, they think that if I could just figure out ways to change these numbers, and then they look at their team and they're like, oh, they're fine. And then they go right on to the next piece. So do you encourage people to really, kind of unpack their team and digest it and tear it apart in a positive way, the way that they look at their P&Ls?
Yes, I think that P&Ls are reflective of how well your team is. Now say you're burning everyone out and you're having crazy profits. It's also not going to be sustainable.
Sure,
So I
sure.
think that is something to look at.
Wow.
Yes, I definitely think this is something to add in to the forefront of your thoughts. And also one thing is checking in with yourself. How am I doing? What am I modeling? Like am I feeling burnt out? And so that's also something to think about as well.
Well, you know what? You hear all those breaks going on right now, Emily. Everybody was super excited until we had to go into the self-awareness thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Entrepreneurs are not interested a lot of times,
Hmm.
right? In
Hmm.
self-awareness. I just got to keep
Yes.
going, going, going. So that's a really great point as we start to land today, is that,
Hmm.
for you listening, if you're not going to really invest time in yourself, as well as the team, because a lot of times it's easy to say the team does this wrong. If the team would do this better, the team needs this, blah, blah, blah. I'm fine. I don't need any of this. These people need it. I think that really, can alienate you as a leader, because if you're not kind of right there with them, learning, showing your wellness or lack thereof, I think that just shows, it kind of is in my mind, it's a kink in the armor. So I'm just curious on your side, Emily, if you need, or the most successful wellness programs also include the leader, I'm assuming, correct?
Yeah. So if you don't have buy-in from the top, then no one else is going to feel like it's authentic.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It just means you're maybe creating a culture of space for people to have time to do things or to talk about it, or you're curious, you're paying for it. So you can do certain, but also if you're, ordering in Taco Bell every day and sending emails, at Saturday at 2 a.m. and wondering why people aren't responding. And that's not a healthy lifestyle that people that's setting the tone for how people should be living outside of the workplace too. So it's something to recognize what you're modeling.
Okay, what's wrong with Taco Bell, Emily? Come on.
Well, I like it, but it doesn't make you feel good when you're sitting in front of Zoom all day long.
Right, exactly. Oh man, eating that and then sitting. I mean, I've at least learned, for me, I'm honored to be able to have a standing desk, and I've stood for the last, I don't know, probably 7, 8 years. It just makes such a difference. But yeah, I can imagine sitting there and then going and having a big lunch and then coming back and sitting at a computer screen all slunched over, and the
Yeah.
tacos are
Hmm.
just like, oh. So I mean, that's just me. See, that's what's so weird, is everybody has their own definition of wellness. And I
Exactly.
want to encourage everybody that's listening to create your own definition and act on it, and then talk with your group and find out what they think it means, because I'm guessing you're going to learn a ton, from your group. And you can obviously be the leader, the facilitator of it, but I still think getting group buy-in, like she said, getting leadership buy-in, but also group buy-in too, is got to be just as important, I would assume, correct?
Yes, because not one size fits all. I mean, if you're running like a biggest loser challenge where you want everyone to lose weight and there's only one person that really needs to, I mean, it just is not going to be worth it. So I think, yeah, talking about what do people need, which is
Yeah.
most likely going to be around stress and mindfulness and mental health right now. And So that's really the hottest conversation right now, and a little bit of movement. How do we take breaks during the day?
Sure. That's great. Well, one last question for you, Emily, and then I'm going to let you go. So what's one thing that most people don't know about you that you feel comfortable sharing?
Ooh, one thing that most people don't know about me that I feel comfortable sharing. Well, I'm a pretty open book. So I would have to say, believe it or not, I love whitewater rafting, and on my own time, I row my own rig. So I'm a small person, and who can row a big boat, and that's one of my passions.
Wow. So
Unexpected thing about me.
so you said a big word I don't know. So whitewater rafting I get, but you said you do what do you do your own what?
Oh, I have an oar frame and I row my own boat down the river and through
Oh,
rapids and things like that.
oh
It's one
my
of my
gosh.
favorite things to do.
So that's where you're stressed, right? So as soon as you're in the water, is your stress gone? Is that kind of how that is? Same as my motorcycle?
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, there's no way that I can be on a phone or think or answering emails.
Yeah.
So it's a true connection with nature, and also I have to be focused.
Yeah,
So,
I was going to say you can't even really think about what you're going to do tomorrow at the office if it's a Sunday or whatever. So you really have to 100% focus right on that, correct?
right. Yeah, so that's necessary for me
That's awesome.
sometimes.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for sharing, and again, for people listening, I mean, we really invest a ton of time every week, to try and find these little tidbits of information. These are not huge course corrections that we're expecting. It's a little thing to be able to, now that you've heard this, rather than go on to the next, task, or rather than go on to the next podcast, why not just think about, and I, best case, write it down. What does wellness mean for you? And try and come up with some ways that you can integrate that wellness into your team. And if you're struggling with it, that's why Emily's here, is to be able to come alongside you and do that. So if people want to get in contact with you, Emily, what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
The best way is on my website, which is just my name, Emily Marquis, MARQUIS.com. And all things are there.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you so much. It's so encouraging to know that there's people out there that can help us with this, because entrepreneurs, we wear enough hats the way it is. So I'm not sure I want to add the wellness cap onto my, already, long list of things that I'm doing. So if that's you today, again, I just challenge you to reach out to Emily and at least have a conversation. I saw on her website that, she'll, get you started. There won't be a cost for an initial call. And
Mhm.
she's real transparent and shares what her rates are right on the website. And I mean, it's so cool when that's that way. So upfront what you're getting yourself into. And maybe you spend a little bit of time and maybe it doesn't make sense. Maybe you spend a little time and it makes a ton of sense. But I just want to challenge everybody listening to at least consider the wellness of your team, because if you don't have your team, you will not have a customer and you will not have a business. So that's one thing we cannot live without. And this is a new word I made up. Why have unwell people on your team? So thank you so much again for hanging out with us, and
Thank you.
appreciate all the information. And again, for everybody, just be well. And if you struggle with it, call, be happy to help on my end. Emily's happy to help. And so until next week, I challenge you to find out what wellness means and do something about it. Have a great week.